The receipt is still in his hand when Riven Vale realizes what just happened to his wrist. Not a cut, not a bruise, nothing visible. But his skin is burning in a line so specific, so deliberate, that his body has already logged it before his brain catches up. Filed it somewhere deep, somewhere old, somewhere that doesn't respond to logic. The register is beeping. The next customer is already sliding a box of crackers forward. The fluorescent lights of FreshMart Grocery are humming their usual tuneless complaint. Everything in the store is exactly the same as it was 4 minutes ago, except Riven's wrist, and the man who just walked out the door. He swipes the next item, beeps it through, says, "Have a good evening" on autopilot, the words worn smooth from repetition, and tells himself the burning is nothing. A static shock, a coincidence, something explainable that he will explain to himself later when Kip is fed and bathed and the lights are off, and he has 45 quiet seconds before he passes out on the couch. He tells himself that. His wrist keeps burning. 2 hours earlier, Riven's shift is already moving like a bad dream. Lane 6 is the problem lane. Everyone who has worked FreshMart longer than a week knows this. The scanner sticks on anything with a moisture barrier. The belt runs slow, and the register screen freezes if you close a transaction too fast, which means every fourth customer gets a receipt that prints halfway and tears wrong. Riven has worked lane 6 for 14 months. He knows the exact angle to hold a barcode to make the scanner cooperate. He knows the belt speed trick, a half-second pause before the next item, just enough buffer to stop the jam. He knows the screen freeze fix, 2 taps on the left corner, hard, like you're waking it up rather than asking nicely. He knows all of this because knowing things keeps him employed, and being employed keeps the lights on. And the lights being on is the difference between a home and a problem. The earpiece in his left ear buzzes. A voicemail notification. The Daycare. Ms. Okonkwo's warm, professionally patient voice fills his ear. "Mr. Vale, this is Little Learners calling again about the monthly fee. We do need the balance before the end of the week, otherwise we'll have to discuss Kip's enrollment going forward. I know things are tight. Just give us a call when you can." He scans a bag of frozen peas, a box of pasta, a bottle of vitamins. He smiles at the woman with the cart. "Have a good evening." In the back of the register shelf, behind the receipt paper, there is a small backpack. Inside it, a stuffed dog named Captain, a folded drawing done in green crayon that says DADA in the handwriting of someone who learned the letter A 3 months ago, and a granola bar Riven has been saving since Tuesday. This is not a detail. This is a math problem. Everything in Riven's life is a math problem. Rent, formula, heating, the registration fee he owes the pediatrician, the bus pass that runs out Friday, the number of hours between now and when he picks Kip up from daycare, multiplied by the number of things that could go wrong in that window. He scans, he smiles. He says, "Have a good evening." He runs the math. Hi viewers, real quick before we go further, have you ever done something kind for a complete stranger and immediately regretted it? Drop it in the comments. I need to know I'm not the only one. The doors slide open at 4:47 p.m. and the store changes. Not loudly. That's the thing. Loud Riven can handle. Loud is a drunk man arguing about coupons. Loud is a mother with 3 kids under 5 and a full cart. Loud is Garrick Mott on a power trip with a clipboard. Riven has protocols for loud. This is silence. A specific, involuntary silence, the kind that moves through a crowd like a pressure shift. Conversations dropping mid-sentence, carts slowing. 2 teenagers near the end cap display stop texting and look up without knowing why. The man who causes it doesn't make a sound when he walks. Tall, dark suit, no tie, the fabric the kind of expensive that doesn't announce itself. Posture like load-bearing architecture. Not stiff, not performed, just the posture of a man who has never once stood in a room and wondered if he was allowed to be there. He carries one item, a single bottle of water. He navigates a crowded grocery store at 4:47 p.m. on a Thursday, past a display of paper towels, around a woman with a double stroller, past the express lane backup, without slowing, without hesitation, without a single brush against cart or person. The black wraparound visor catches the fluorescent light first, then the scar, pale, thin, starting at his left temple and cutting into his hairline like something that happened fast and meant to be permanent. He steps into Riven's line, sets the water on the belt. His hands are gloved, dark leather, fitted, the kind of gloves that aren't about warmth. He stands with the water in front of him and does nothing else and manages, somehow, to make lane 6 feel small. Riven's scanner hand slows, just slightly, just enough for the woman at the front of his line to notice and glance back. He recovers, finishes her transaction, hands her the receipt. "Have a good evening." Then it's just the man with the visor, and the water, and the silence. Riven opens his mouth to say the total, $1.89, and the man pats his jacket. Once. A gesture so controlled it barely qualifies as movement. Then again, slower. His jaw tightens by a fraction. "I don't have my wallet." Not an apology, not embarrassed, stated, like a weather report. The line behind him, 6 people deep by now, reacts immediately and badly. A sigh that could qualify as a sound effect. Someone mutters, "Of course." Someone else laughs, short and mean. A man near the back says, "Can we move this along?" to no one in particular. The man with the visor doesn't acknowledge any of it. He tilts his head just slightly, the angle of someone who hears more than he lets on, and waits. And then Garrick Mott comes. Store manager, mid-40s, the particular type of man who interprets authority as permission. He has been writing Riven up for bathroom breaks since March. He has been adjusting Riven's schedule to conflict with daycare pickup since April. Last month, he told the assistant manager, loud enough for Riven to hear from 2 registers down, that some employees expect accommodations that simply aren't in the budget. Garrick spots the situation, high-end alpha, no wallet, growing line, and he moves with the energy of a man who has been waiting all day for exactly this. He positions himself where the whole front end can see him, plants his feet, projects his voice. "Sir, if you're unable to pay, you'll need to step aside." Not a suggestion, not even a management decision, a performance. The line shuffles. Someone near the back actually cranes their neck. The man with the visor turns his head, not toward Garrick, but slightly past him, like Garrick's voice came from a direction he's already catalogued and dismissed. The movement is precise, unsettling. The visor catches the overhead light and reflects nothing. Garrick's smile doesn't waver. It gets bigger, because the man with the visor can't see it. And Garrick knows that. Riven watches this happen. He watches Garrick stand in front of a man who can't see the smug performance being made of his misfortune, and he watches the line shift with the small, collective permission that crowds give themselves when they've decided someone is fair game. Riven's hand finds his pocket. He doesn't make a conscious decision. He will think about this later, will turn it over and examine it, try to locate the moment, the exact neural sequence, and he won't be able to. Because it isn't a decision. It's the same reflex that makes him step between Kip and a barking dog. It's older than thought. He pulls out his card, the crumpled one, the one with the chipped corner he's been meaning to replace since January. He holds it over the reader, swipes. $1.89. The register accepts it. The receipt prints. The line starts moving. Garrick's smile disappears. Riven doesn't look at him. He pulls the receipt from the machine and sets it on the belt next to the water and says, to the man with the visor quietly, "It's covered, Have a good evening. 3 seconds of silence. Then the man's head turns. Not toward Riven's face, not toward the register, but toward Riven's voice, with the accuracy of a compass finding north. And in that adjustment, in the specific way he orients toward the sound of Riven's words, something shifts in the air between them. Don't, the man says. One word. Low. Not angry. The way you say don't when you mean I won't forget this. Riven's hand is already pulling back from the reader. The transaction is already done. It's just water, Riven says, keeping his voice even, keeping his eyes on the screen. Not because he isn't looking. He is looking. He's looking very carefully. But because staring at an alpha for too long in a public space is the kind of thing that creates problems, and Riven does not need problems. What happens next takes maybe 4 seconds. The man reaches across the counter, slowly, deliberately, like someone measuring the air for obstacles before they move through it. His gloved hand crosses the space between them, and his thumb, one thumb, just the thumb, through the leather, presses against the inside of Riven's wrist. One beat, controlled, intentional, an exact amount of pressure that lasts an exact amount of time. A mark, not a bite, not anything that could be photographed or reported or described to HR. Just an old gesture, old enough to predate everything else. The kind of contact that bypasses the modern world completely and lands somewhere in Omegaverse biology that doesn't have a rational override. This Omega is accounted for. This Omega is under a claim. Riven's entire nervous system lights up like a fire alarm in a building that thought it was empty. He doesn't move. He cannot move. His hand is flat on the counter and his wrist is burning, and the man, this stranger, this alpha he does not know, leans forward just slightly, just enough, and says, low and even, and only for Riven, I know your scent. Then he straightens. He picks up the water. He walks out. The doors slide closed behind him, and Riven stands at lane 6 with the receipt still in his hand, his wrist on fire, his heart doing something it has not done in years, something fast and stupid and biological, and he thinks, that was an accident. He needs it to have been an accident. The shift ends at 6. Riven clocks out in the back room, changes out of his work vest, retrieves Captain from the small backpack behind the register. He picks up Kip from Daycare 8 minutes before closing. He gives Ms. Okonkwo the partial payment, all he has until Friday, and she accepts it without making it smaller than it is, which is the specific kindness that undoes him every time. Kip shows him the beetle drawing on the bus home. A beetle, green crayon, 6 legs, none of them the right length. Riven tells him it is the best beetle he has ever seen. He cooks pasta. He runs a bath. He reads 2 pages of a book about a bear who is afraid of thunderstorms until Kip is asleep. He sits on the edge of the couch in the quiet apartment and looks at his wrist. Nothing visible, no mark, no bruise, just skin. It is still burning. He opens his work schedule app to check tomorrow's shift. Not because he needs to, he knows it by heart, but because he needs something ordinary to look at, something that confirms the shape of his regular life. Every shift slot is empty. 3 weeks of scheduled work, 8 confirmed shifts. Gone. White space where his name was, like it was never there at all. And at the top of his inbox, a new email. The subject line in bold. Register activity, investigation pending. Please do not report to your assigned station until further notice. Riven reads it twice, then he reads it a 3rd time, slower, the way you read something when you are hoping the meaning will change. It doesn't. He sets the phone face down on the couch cushion. In the bedroom, Kip is asleep with Captain under one arm and the beetle drawing on the pillow next to him. Riven looks at the ceiling. He thinks, I paid $2 for a stranger's water. That is the entire thing I did. That is the sum total of what happened. His phone buzzes. He flips it over. Unknown number. A text. 6 words. Don't scrub your wrist. It won't help. The phone is still in Riven's hand at 2 a.m. He hasn't responded. He hasn't moved from the couch. The apartment has gone fully dark, except for the blue screen glow, and Captain is on the cushion next to him, because Kip kicked him out of the bed sometime around midnight, which happens every Tuesday for reasons nobody has ever explained. 6 words. A text from a number that doesn't exist in any contact, from a man Riven spent less than 4 minutes with at a grocery store register. A man who pressed his thumb to Riven's wrist in a way that was so brief and so controlled that Riven almost convinced himself it hadn't happened. Don't scrub your wrist, it won't help. The word scrub is the problem. Not the message, the word. Because Riven did scrub his wrist, in the break room sink, before clocking out, water hot enough to turn his skin pink. He stood over the basin for 2 full minutes and told himself it was just the nerves from a long shift, just the uncomfortable prickle of someone standing too close, just biology doing what biology does when an alpha is near and you haven't adjusted your suppressants in 3 weeks because the pharmacy requires a new prescription and the appointment costs money. He told himself all of that, and then he came home and scrubbed his wrist again. The man couldn't have seen that. The man cannot see anything. The visor, the scar, the precision of how he moved through a crowded store. Blind, or close enough to it that the difference doesn't change anything. He wasn't in the break room. He was not in Riven's apartment. But the text says scrub. Riven puts the phone face down on the couch, picks it up again, puts it down. He falls asleep at 2:47 a.m. with the phone in his hand and the burn on his wrist still going, steady and low, like a pilot light nobody told him about. He is already in his work vest when the email hits his phone at 7:12 a.m. He reads it standing in the kitchen, one hand on the counter, Kip eating cereal at the table behind him. The email is from a woman named Diane in People Operations, and it contains the phrases preliminary findings, register transaction irregularities, suspension without pay pending investigation, badge access deactivated effective immediately. Kip is making the cereal pieces fight each other. DADA, can the O's beat the squares? Yeah, buddy, Riven says. O's win. I knew it. Riven puts his phone in his pocket. He finishes making Kip's lunch, half a sandwich, apple slices, the last of the crackers, and he packs the daycare bag and he ties Kip's shoes and he stands in the doorway of his own apartment at 7:45 a.m. in a vest he is apparently no longer allowed to wear, and he breathes. In. Out. He takes the vest off, hangs it on the hook, picks up the daycare bag. Let's go, buddy. By 9 a.m., the story has already made a partial lap around the FreshMart break room. Riven knows this because Desta Okafor, who has worked the express lane for 6 years and functions as the store's unofficial intelligence network, calls him from the parking lot on her break and delivers information in the rapid, staccato style of someone who knows she only has 8 minutes. Okay, so Garrick printed the footage. He printed it, Riven, like he went to the actual printer and he walked it to HR himself this morning before the store opened. The clip is 43 seconds. It shows you at your register swiping a card, and it doesn't show the customer. It doesn't show the line. It doesn't show anything that explains what was happening. It just shows you putting a card through the reader on a transaction. Riven listens. And he framed it as, quote, unauthorized card use for personal benefit, unquote. Like you were running a scam. With a water bottle. A $1.89 scam, Riven says. I know. On a customer who was standing right there. I know, Riven. A pause. Desta's voice drops. He's been building this for months. You know that, right? The bathroom write-ups, the schedule shifts, The thing he said to Marcus about Omega employees needing, quote, more oversight. He's been building a file. This was just, he needed a moment, and you gave him one. Riven is sitting on a bench near the bus stop 3 blocks from the daycare. The morning is grey and cold, and a pigeon is doing something deeply committed to a piece of bagel near his feet. The customer, Riven says, the man with the visor, you know who he is? A short silence, then DADA makes a sound that is not quite a laugh. Bastion Crow Group, port logistics, private security, and what my cousin Terrell calls things that move at night. He doesn't do press, he doesn't do charity events. The last time someone tried to photograph him without permission, their camera equipment developed a series of problems. Another pause. Riven, why was Bastion Crow in our FreshMart? He wanted water, Riven says. He owns 3 companies that could have water delivered to his house in under an hour. The pigeon finishes the bagel. Riven says, I have to go. He doesn't go to the HR meeting because he is invited. He goes because DADA texts him the time and tells him that going is the only way to get anything on record. And Riven has been navigating systems that weren't designed for him long enough to know that the only mistake worse than making a move is making no move at all. The room is small, drop ceiling, 2 people across a folding table, loss prevention, people operations, the laptop, the clip. Garrick stands slightly behind them, not at the table, not in the conversation, just present, the way a match is present near dry paper. Riven watches the 43-second clip, watches himself, from a camera angle that removes all context. Swipe a card at an empty-looking register. He looks, in the footage, like exactly what Garrick needed him to look like. I paid for a customer, Riven says. He didn't have his wallet. There was a line building and the manager was escalating the situation, and I covered it to move things along. It was $1.89. Do you have documentation of the customer's consent? People Operations asks. Riven stares at her. He was standing at my register. We don't have verification of the customer's presence in the footage. Because the camera angle was, Policy 4.7 prohibits employees from running personal cards through store registers regardless of circumstances. Garrick, behind them, is looking at the wall, but his chin is up. And Riven has been watching people who feel like they've won long enough to know what winning looks like on someone who shouldn't be winning. He is suspended before 10 a.m. He walks to the parking lot. He sits on a curb near a shopping cart return. He does not cry. That is a rule. That has been a rule since Kip was 6 weeks old, and Riven sat in a hospital parking lot and decided that if he was going to do this alone, he had to be the kind of person who handles things and then falls apart later, in private, where it doesn't cost him anything. He handles it. He breathes. His phone rings. Unknown number. He answers it without deciding to. They showed you the clip. Not a question. The voice is low, controlled, the quality of someone who speaks on recorded lines with the awareness that they're being recorded. Garrick Mott pulled the footage and trimmed it himself. He's been documenting you for 7 months. Riven says, how do you know my schedule was targeted? Because I know what was on the clip and what wasn't, and I know what a professionally edited surveillance frame looks like. A pause. I need to tell you something, not over the phone. I don't know you. You paid $1.89 for me yesterday. You know me enough. The grey morning does nothing. The parking lot does nothing. 3 rows over, a man is loading groceries into a minivan, and the whole scene is so ordinary that Riven almost laughs. What do you want? He asks. To tell you the truth. The voice is careful, deliberate. My wallet wasn't missing. It was taken, professionally, with airport-level technique, by a contractor, someone who wanted me to react publicly, to mark an omega in a visible setting and create a scandal they could use against me. Riven says nothing. They chose your register, Bastion Crow continues, because you are documented as isolated, income precarious, and unlikely to have resources to push back. The minivan drives away. They chose me, Riven says, because they thought I was easy to destroy. A pause, long enough to be honest. Yes, Bastion says, and I'm not going to let that happen. Riven's jaw tightens. He is forming the words, "I don't need," when his phone buzzes. A second notification breaking into the call. He pulls it from his ear. A photo. Kip standing in the little learner's yard. Yellow jacket. Captain the dog under one arm. Time-stamped 11 minutes ago. Taken from outside the fence, from a distance, zoomed in. Below it, payment due. Riven's vision narrows to a point. Every thought he was building, every careful, self-sufficient, "I can handle this" argument, collapses. Not slowly, instantly. The way a structure doesn't lean before it falls, it just falls. He puts the phone back to his ear. "Someone just sent me a photo of my son," he says. His voice is level only because leveling it is the one thing he can control right now. At daycare, taken from outside. 3 seconds of silence on the other end. The specific silence of a man recalibrating every variable in a situation simultaneously. "Get in the car," Bastion says. "What car?" "Black town car, east side of the parking lot. It's been there for the last 12 minutes. Riven stands up. He looks east. There it is. Someone engineered Bastion's wallet being stolen just to get him to mark an omega in public. Someone chose Riven's register specifically, documented his hours, knew his schedule, and now they have a photo of his 6-year-old. The inside of the town car is quiet in a way that costs money. No road noise, no rattling vents. The leather seats are dark and clean, and the privacy partition between the front and back is up, and Riven sits with his hands in his lap and his phone face up on his knee. The photo of Kip still on the screen because he cannot bring himself to close it. And Bastion Crow sits across from him in the opposite seat and says nothing for the first 40 seconds. Riven doesn't fill the silence. He has learned over years of job interviews and HR meetings and conversations with people who had more power than him that filling silence is a form of surrender. Bastion's gloved hands rest on his knees. The visor is on. The scar at his temple catches the tinted window light. He's angled slightly away. Not rudely, just the orientation of someone who locates people by sound and is currently tracking Riven's breathing, the rustle of his jacket, the specific weight of his silence. "The man who took my wallet," Bastion says, "goes by the name Dre Kofelt. He's a security contractor. Clean background, multiple corporate clients, mid-level enough that nobody looks at him twice. He was in FreshMart at 4:31 p.m. Left at 4:44 p.m. Your line opened at 4:46. Riven processes this. He took it and left before you got to the register. Correct. And you knew it was gone before you got in line. A pause. Yes, Bastion says. Riven looks at him. Then why did you stay? Why not leave, call someone, handle it away from... He stops, recalculates. You stayed because leaving would have confirmed that you knew. And if you knew, whoever sent Kofelt would know their play failed. Bastion is very still. So you stayed in line, Riven continues, with no wallet, knowing someone was watching, to make them think it worked. Except it didn't work the way they planned because Because you paid, Bastion says, quiet, which I told you not to do. You said don't after I already swiped. I said don't while your hand was moving. My hand moves fast. Something changes in Bastion's expression. Not a smile, nothing close to a smile, but the specific relaxation of a jaw that was braced against something it did not expect. It lasts less than a second. The goal, Bastion says, returning to the flat precision he appears to live inside, was for me to react badly. An alpha publicly without resources, in front of cameras. They wanted aggression, an incident. What they did not account for was a cashier covering the transaction before an incident was possible. So I accidentally protected you, Riven says. Yes. And then you marked me. A beat. Yes, Bastion says. Why? The question sits between them. Riven watches Bastion's gloved thumb move. Once, a slow press against his own knee. A controlled movement. The gesture of someone choosing their words, the way a surgeon chooses an instrument. Because you did something kind in a situation designed to make kindness impossible, Bastion says. And I reacted. His voice stays even, but something underneath it shifts. It wasn't strategic. Riven looks at his own hands. It got me suspended, he says. Not accusing, reporting. I know. I have a 6-year-old. Suspended without pay means… I know what it means, Bastion says. I've already had someone pull your employment file, your financial records, and your lease, not to use against you, to understand what I caused. Riven goes very still. You pulled my financial records. Yes. That's illegal without authorization, Bastion says. Yes, I'm aware. He pauses. I'm also aware that your heating bill is past due, that your daycare owes you a receipt for a payment you made in cash 3 weeks ago that they haven't issued, and that your lease renewal is in 40 days. He turns his head toward Riven's exact position with the precision that still unsettles Riven every time. I caused this. I don't cause things and then look away. Riven opens his mouth, closes it. There are 3 different things he wants to say, and all of them are some version of, I don't need your help, and all of them are, in this moment, next to the photo of Kip still on his phone screen, untrue. The photo, Riven says, my son. Bastion's jaw tightens. One controlled, visible tightening. Whoever hired Kofelt has been watching you since they identified your register as the target point. The photo means they expected the wallet play to trigger a mark, and they're using your child as leverage to confirm that it worked, that you're connected to me now. But I'm not, Riven says. I'm a cashier who paid for a water bottle. That's the entire relationship. Bastion says nothing. Riven looks at the photo again. Kip. Yellow jacket. Captain the stuffed dog. Time-stamped 11 minutes ago, taken from outside a fence, from a distance, by someone who knew exactly who to photograph. What do they want? Riven asks. Control, Bastion says. Of me. The Crow Group board is voting in 11 days on 3 port contracts worth more than the GDP of a small country. If I'm unstable, publicly, personally, legally, the vote fails. If I'm managing a scandal involving an Omega employee and a claim, he stops. If I'm distracted by the protection of someone I've marked. You're distracted from the vote, Riven finishes. Yes. So your enemies used me as a distraction. As a pressure point, Bastion says. And a test. If I protect you, I confirm the mark is real, and they have leverage over my attention. If I don't protect you, my son and I become a warning to anyone else who might get close to you, Riven says. The car is moving. Riven hasn't noticed where. The partition is still up, and the city outside the tinted windows is doing its ordinary Thursday afternoon things. I need you to let me move you, Bastion says. Temporarily. You and Kip. Somewhere secured while I close this from my end. No. Riven, no. Riven's voice is even but absolute. I've been building a safe life for my son for 6 years. I'm not going to let someone I met yesterday put us in a car and drive us somewhere because his enemies know my address now. He pauses.
You want to help?
Get me my job back. Get Garrick Mott off my employment file. Let me handle my own life. Bastion is quiet for a moment. Your job will be reinstated, he says, by tomorrow morning. How? Because I'm going to make a call that ends Garrick Mott's employment before 5 p.m. today. Riven stares at him. Just like that? Yes. No legal battle, no appeals process, no. Garrick Mott has been falsifying scheduling data to harass Omega employees for 18 months, Bastion says. He has also been approving supply invoices from a vendor he owns a partial stake in, which is fraud, which I have documented and which I am about to share with corporate compliance in approximately. He tilts his head slightly towards some internal calculation. 40 minutes. Riven blinks. I looked into him, Bastion says simply. When I looked into you. The car slows, stops. They're in front of Riven's building. Riven reaches for the door handle. Stops. You said your wallet was taken to trigger a reaction, Riven says. To make you mark someone. He turns. But you could have let the moment pass. You had the option not to react. He pauses. Why didn't you? Bastion faces forward. The visor reflects the window light. Because, he says, and here the flat precision of his voice changes, something in the floor of it shifting. Your scent doesn't use blockers correctly. The left wrist, it's uneven. I noticed it from 6 feet away. He pauses. You've been unprotected for weeks, and you were choosing kindness in a situation that was designed to teach you not to. A long silence. That's not an answer to why you marked me, Riven says. Bastion's thumb presses his knee again. That same controlled beat. No, he says, it isn't. Riven gets out of the car. He is halfway up his building's front steps when his phone buzzes. A new email. FreshMart Corporate. Sender, Director of Regional Operations. Mr. Vale, we have reviewed your case and wish to extend our sincerest apology for the procedural error in your suspension. Your position has been reinstated, effective immediately, with full back pay. Please report Monday. A formal inquiry into Lane 6 management practices has also been opened. He reads it twice, then he looks up. The black town car is still idling at the curb. Bastion's window is down an inch, just enough. Riven thinks about going back down the steps. He does not go back down the steps. He goes inside. He sits on the couch. He picks up Captain, who has been sitting on the cushion since last night. His phone buzzes again. Same unknown number. 2 words. Lock your door. He locks the door. He sits in his apartment with the locks engaged and the reinstated job email on his phone and the photo of his son still open in another window, and he thinks about a man who pulled strings from the back seat of a town car in under 40 minutes, and who noticed an uneven suppressant application from 6 feet away, and who said, I know your scent, like it was a fact he had been carrying since the moment he walked through those sliding doors. His wrist burns. He looks at the ceiling. Down on the street, a car door closes. Garrick is gone. The job is back. Bastion Crow moved faster than Riven thought possible. But the photo of Kip was taken by someone who knows where he goes every day. Someone who planned this from the beginning, and they haven't made their real move yet. The job reinstatement email is still on Riven's phone when the daycare calls at 8:17 a.m. Not Miss Okonkwo, a voice he doesn't recognize. Calm, friendly, the precise warmth of someone performing friendliness, informing him that little learners received an anonymous tip regarding a welfare concern for one of their enrolled children, and that, per policy, they are required to flag it to both parents and the appropriate county office. Riven asks who filed the tip. The voice says, we aren't given that information. He asks what the concern was. parental instability, financial precarity, recent changes in home environment. Riven sits with the phone against his ear for 3 seconds. Home environment. He is in his apartment, his locked, ordinary apartment, with Captain on the couch and the cereal bowls in the drying rack, and Kip's beetle drawing still on the refrigerator. Nothing has changed in his home environment, except for the presence, in the last 48 hours, of a man Riven did not invite and would not have chosen, and who pressed his thumb to Riven's wrist and apparently set a chain reaction in motion that Riven still does not fully understand. "I understand," Riven says. "Thank you for calling." He hangs up. He picks up his keys. He does not call Bastion. He is absolutely not calling Bastion. He is going to pick up his son from daycare, bring him home, figure out what anonymous tip means in legal terms, and handle this the way he has handled every other impossible thing. Alone, methodically, without anyone's black town car idling at his curb. He is on the front steps of his building when the town car is already there. Riven stops. The driver doesn't move. The car idles. The rear window is down 2 inches, and Bastion Crow's voice comes through the gap before Riven has said a single word. "CPS flag. Filed this morning. Anonymous. I know." Riven walks down the steps and gets in the car. This time the partition is down. The driver is a broad-shouldered man named Cyrus. Bastion introduces him in one flat sentence, who drives like someone trained to make progress without drawing attention. The city moves past the windows at a pace that is both unhurried and somehow faster than traffic logic suggests. Bastion has a tablet on his knee. He is not looking at it, but his fingers rest against the edge in a way that suggests the information is already in his head, and the tablet is simply documentation. The tip was filed by a shell account routed through a county contractor portal, Bastion says. The account was created 6 days ago, which means they planned this before the wallet, Riven says. Correct. Before you ever walked into FreshMart. Yes. Riven looks out the window. They are heading, he realizes, toward Little Learners. Already, Bastion's people already knew, already moved the car. "Tell me about the board vote," Riven says. Bastion glances toward him, the visor angle that Riven has already started reading like a face. "Why?" "Because I've been used as a piece in something I don't understand, and I'd like to understand it." A pause. Then Bastion lays it out. Not simplified, not condescending, the way you would explain something to a person you expect to comprehend it. 3 port contracts, import-export licensing, logistics infrastructure, a security tender that covers 12 facilities, a board vote in 9 days, a competitor named Duarte Weller who sits on 2 overlapping committees and has been building a case for months that Bastion Crow is an unreliable partner. Volatile, reckless, prone to decisions that expose the company to liability. They didn't just need you to mark someone, Riven says. They needed you to mark someone vulnerable. Someone who would look like proof that you're reckless, a single Omega parent with no resources and a child in the system. Someone a judge would look at and see. A pattern, Bastion says. An unstable alpha using an omega, the way the old stories say alphas use omegas, Riven says, flat, as a possession. Bastion's hands are very still. Yes, he says. The car slows. Little Learners is a block ahead. Riven can see the paper chain of handprints in the window from here. If I go in and take Kip and leave, Riven says, that's 1 day. They'll try again tomorrow. They'll try the day after. The CPS flag is in the system now. It doesn't disappear because we ignore it. No, Bastion says. It doesn't. What does disappear it? A legitimate legal response that demonstrates stability, consistent care, and no credible basis for intervention. He pauses. I have a family attorney, Jayla Hines, the best in this state. She works for her clients. Not for me, not for Crow Group. I want to connect you with her today. Riven looks at him. Why would you? Because I caused this, and I don't look away from what I cause. They sit with that. The paper hands in the window catch the morning light. I'm not taking charity, Riven says. I know, Bastion says. Call it a debt. I owe you $1.89 and the last 48 hours of your life. This is the beginning of what I owe. Riven opens the car door. Come with me, he says, not an invitation, an assessment. If someone is watching this pickup, I want them to see that I'm not alone and I'm not scared. Bastion opens his door without hesitation. They walk into Little Learners together, Riven in front, Bastion a half step back and left, Cyrus staying with the car. The front desk has a woman Riven doesn't recognize, young, polo shirt, with an earpiece just visible at the edge of her collar. Riven signs in, steady hands, normal voice. Ms. Okonkwo brings Kip out herself. She meets Riven's eyes over Kip's head with a look that says, I see you. I'm not telling them anything. You are not alone here. The specific professional solidarity of a woman who has watched this building be used against parents before. Kip sees Riven and runs. Full speed, yellow jacket. Captain the dog flapping from one fist. He hits Riven at knee height with the full commitment of a 6-year-old who has no sense of self-preservation and trusts completely. Riven catches him, holds him for 1 second longer than normal. Just one. Then Kip leans back and looks up, past Riven at the tall man standing slightly behind him, with the wide, unfiltered assessment of a child who has not yet learned to perform his reactions. He doesn't look scared. He doesn't look uncertain. He tips his head to one side like he's solving something. Then he says, completely calm, Your smell makes my head quiet. The sentence lands in the air between all three of them. Riven goes very still. Bastion goes very still, because that is not a child's random comment. That is Omega biology speaking at full volume through a 6-year-old who has never been taught to muffle it. A bonding response, primal, specific, the kind that fires when an Omega nervous system identifies an alpha as safe in the way that safety is supposed to feel. The kind that says, rest, stop running, this one will not hurt you. Kip has never said that about anyone. Riven knows this absolutely. He has taken Kip to work events, school functions, the pediatrician, the dentist, who is a warm beater who gives stickers and the best dinosaur high fives on the east side. And Kip has never once said anything like that. Bastion crouches down slowly, to eye level, the way he does everything, measured, deliberate, nothing accidental. What's your dog's name? He asks. Captain, Kip says, and holds him up for inspection with both hands. Bastion nods. Serious. Does he have a rank? Kip considers. Their bodies have already decided to trust. Riven watches his son's small fingers wrap around Bastion's gloved ones. He doesn't know what to do with the feeling this gives him. It doesn't have a name he's comfortable using. It lives in the same place as the burning on his wrist, the place that 2 pups, equal value. He stops walking. Bastion stops beside him, his hand still in Kip's. What came through? Bastion says, not a question, reading it in Riven's stillness. Riven turns the phone. Bastion doesn't look at the screen. Who is the girl? Riven asks. Bastion's hand tightens around Kip's. Kip looks up, unconcerned, already working to get Captain situated more comfortably under his other arm. Bastion's voice, when it comes, is entirely level. The levelness of someone who has decided that what they're feeling is not permitted to appear. Her name is Sable, he says. The way children understand weather, leans against Bastion's leg and says nothing, just leans, Captain pressed between them. Riven looks at the photo on his phone, the little girl in the red coat, the schoolyard, the angle of the photo, taken close enough to be a message. I can get to your children, both of them, anytime. With resources, patience, and access, found a child that even Bastion Crow had kept hidden. And now both children are in play. Bastion's safe house is not what Riven expected. No gates, no compound, no visible security infrastructure that would announce itself to neighbors. Ready before he needed it. He prepares things in advance of needing them. That thought lands in a complicated place. Inside, two of Bastion's people, quiet and efficient, running checks on windows and exits with the low-key focus of professionals who are good enough at their jobs not to look dramatic about it. A kitchen with food already in the refrigerator. Not random food, specific food. And Riven only realizes this when he opens it and sees that it contains apple slices and the exact brand of oat milk Kip's pediatrician recommended, and a granola bar that is the same brand as the one Riven has been keeping in the register shelf backpack. He closes the refrigerator. He turns around. Bastion is standing at the kitchen doorway. You researched Kip's dietary needs, Riven says. I researched everything, Bastion says, before I came to your building the first day. Before I decided to... He stops, adjusts. I needed to understand what I was responsible for. Riven looks at the refrigerator, at the apple slices, at the oat milk with the pediatrician recommended label. That's a lot of detail for someone you spent 4 minutes with at a register, Riven says. Bastion says nothing. Unless, Riven says slowly, 4 minutes wasn't the beginning. The kitchen is quiet. Cyrus and the second team member are in other rooms. Kip is on the living room floor, already reorganizing Captain's command structure with the focus of someone who has decided this is now operational headquarters. Bastion's jaw shifts, that single controlled movement that Riven has started reading like punctuation. I'll tell you everything, Bastion says, but I need to find Sable first. Where is she? We're tracking the schoolyard location. My team has the camera footage. She's not in the facility anymore. She was moved when the photo was sent. That means they have a mobile holding situation, which means they're not settling in, which means they want a response fast, Riven says. They want you reactive and moving before you can plan. Bastion's head tilts toward him, that particular angle. Yes. So don't be reactive, Riven says. Think. I am thinking. You're moving, Riven says. Those aren't the same thing. Bastion is very still for a moment. Then he pulls out the tablet, sets it on the counter. His team has already pulled satellite imagery of the surrounding area. The school, surrounding blocks, 3 possible vehicle routes. Riven looks at the map, looks at the street names. Mercer and 5th, Riven says. Bastion turns. What about it? There's a charity building on that corner. Weller Foundation. That's Duarte Weller, right? The port competitor. He traces a line on the tablet with his finger. FreshMart had a supply contract with them for 2 years. Administrative goods, paper products, break room supplies, cleaning. I processed their orders. Their loading dock is on the south face. Tuesday evenings they run 1 guard instead of 2 because the contractor double bills the security shift and shorts the head count. Cyrus from the doorway says, Sir? I heard, Bastion says. The alarm sensor on their service entrance, Riven continues, has been flagged in 3 consecutive maintenance logs as non-functional. The landlord hasn't fixed it because the building's on a partial lease and the tenant is responsible for repairs. And Weller Foundation has been contesting the bill. I know this because I processed a complaint letter from their facilities manager last October. He looks up. Bastion is looking at him, or positioned toward him, the visor tracking his voice with that precision that is starting to feel, to Riven, less like compensation for sight loss and more like an entirely different kind of seeing. You were invisible, Bastion says. I was a cashier, Riven says. People hand cashiers paper, documents, forms, complaint letters they're mailing on their lunch break. Nobody thinks about what a cashier sees because nobody thinks about cashiers. Bastion is quiet for a moment. They built their operation behind a charity building, he says. It's perfect cover, Riven says. Donation receipts, legitimate foot traffic, import documentation disguised as charitable goods. And the service entrance, Bastion says. South Dock, Tuesday evening. 1 guard, broken sensor. Tonight is Tuesday, Riven says. From the living room, Kip announces, Commander Captain says we need more pillows for the fortress. Neither of them responds to this immediately. The apartment is quiet. The map on the tablet shows the Mercer and 5th block in satellite grey. Then Bastion says, quietly, not to the room, to Riven specifically, I need to tell you who Sable is. Riven turns. Her mother's name was Ayana, Bastion says. She worked with me, not for me, with me. She was the person who noticed things nobody else noticed. Pattern recognition, paperwork, the kind of intelligence that doesn't announce itself. He pauses. She was killed in the same operation that cost me my sight. Someone sold her location because she was getting close to the Weller connection. She died before she could finish it. Riven says nothing. She left Sable, Bastion continues, and a letter. The letter asked me to... He stops. To make sure Sable was protected. To make sure she had someone who chose her. I don't have legal custody. I have a promise. The refrigerator hums. The map on the tablet shows the city doing what cities do, indifferent and continuous. Riven thinks about Kip on the floor in the next room, about 6 years of building the architecture of one small life. The daycare fees, the beetle drawings, the oat milk the pediatrician recommended. Without anyone helping, without anyone choosing to show up. He thinks about a woman named Ayana, who got close enough to the truth to be killed for it. He thinks about a letter. She saw it in you, Riven says, not a question. Bastion's jaw shifts. Ayana, Riven says, she asked you because she knew you were the kind of person who would choose a child. Not perform the choice, actually make it. A long silence. I don't know what kind of person I am, Bastion says. It comes out honest in a way that sounds like it cost him. From the living room, Kip appears in the doorway, Captain under one arm. He looks at Bastion with that same wide, unfiltered assessment from the daycare, head tilted, solving something. Then he crosses the kitchen, deliberate, and takes Bastion's hand with both of his. He doesn't say anything. He just holds it. Bastion doesn't move. He stands completely still. The stillness of a man whose composure has been built to withstand almost anything and is currently experiencing something it wasn't built for. And Riven watches his free hand close slowly, very slowly, around Kip's small ones. Riven's throat closes. His wrist burns. He turns back to the map. Tonight, Riven says, South Dock, broken sensor, 1 guard. His voice is steady. We get Sable. We get the evidence. We end this the right way. Documented. Legal. Permanent. You're not coming with me, Bastion says. Riven looks at him. You, Riven says, need someone who knows what to look for in that building's paperwork. You need someone who can read a supply chain document and tell you which ones are legitimate and which ones are laundered. You need someone invisible. Bastion is very still. If you're going to protect us, Riven says, you have to stop treating me like a liability. The kitchen is quiet. Then Bastion says, low and deliberate, the way a man says something he has decided to mean, then be my partner. Kip, between them, is still holding Bastion's hand, and the map on the tablet shows Mercer and 5th, 2 blocks from the waterfront, where a broken sensor and a single guard and a building full of documents are waiting to be found. Bastion said yes. He let Riven in. He told him about Ayana. He told him about Sable. But there is one thing he hasn't said yet. One detail about why he chose Riven's register. Why Riven's sent. Why a man who keeps everyone at a distance reached across a checkout counter and made an irreversible decision in under 4 seconds. Garrick Mott is carrying a cardboard box when security walks him out. That is the detail Riven will remember, not the 2 men in suits flanking him, not the way the entire front end of FreshMart goes quiet. Cashiers slowing their scanners, a bagger stopping mid-bag, a customer with a full cart just standing there holding a loyalty card like she forgot what it was for. Not any of that. The box. Because the box is small. Garrick Mott has worked at FreshMart for 11 years. He has terrorized Omega employees on 3 separate shifts across 2 store locations with the methodical patience of a man who understood that the people he targeted had no safety net below them. 11 years of that, and what it amounts to in the end is a cardboard box that an HR assistant is carrying because Garrick is not permitted to carry it himself. A coffee mug, a desk calendar, a framed photo of a fishing trip. That's all. Desta Okafor sends Riven a voice note at 2:17 p.m. that is 47 seconds of barely contained noise. Not words, just the specific sound a person makes when something they have wanted for a long time finally actually happens. Riven listens to it twice. He is sitting at the kitchen table in Bastion's safe house, Kip asleep in the back bedroom, Bastion's team running quiet perimeter checks outside. He has his reinstatement email open on one screen and Jailer Hines' initial case notes on another. The family attorney Bastion connected him with, who spent 90 minutes on the phone with Riven that morning, and said, at the end of it, with the flat confidence of someone who does not make promises she cannot keep, "The CPS flag is going to disappear. Give me 72 hours. The door opens. Bastion comes in from the front room, Cyrus behind him, tablet in hand. Garrick's vendor fraud documentation is with corporate compliance, Bastion says. They terminated him with cause at 1:45 p.m. The scheduling falsification records have been flagged to the regional HR director. He's done, not suspended, not investigated. Done. Riven closes the laptop. He sits with that for a moment. He thinks about 14 months on Lane 6. The bathroom write-ups. The schedule shifts that made Daycare pick up a crisis every other week. The time Garrick told Marcus from Produce, loud enough to carry, that some employees think their personal circumstances make them special. He thinks about Kip asking why DADA looked tired, and Riven saying just work stuff, buddy, and Kip accepting this with the trust of a child who believes his parent is handling everything. He was handling it, in the way that people handle things when the alternative is collapse, badly, quietly, alone. Thank you, Riven says. Bastion is already moving to the counter, pulling up a secondary file. Don't thank me. He was committing fraud before you ever worked there. I just found the lever. Bastion. He stops. Thank you, Riven says again, firm, not letting him deflect it. Bastion faces toward Riven's voice. The visor catches the afternoon light coming through the kitchen window. His jaw does that small, controlled shift. You're welcome, he says, quietly, like a man who is not used to accepting that word and is making the effort anyway. Cyrus sets the tablet on the table between them. The map of the Mercer and 5th block is already pulled up. Satellite view. Building schematics obtained through channels Riven has decided he doesn't need to examine too closely, and a red marker on the south dock. Tonight is Tuesday. One guard. Broken sensor. A building full of documents that Riven can read and Bastion's team can photograph, and a federal case that has been waiting 18 months for exactly this kind of access. Walk me through it again, Bastion says. The service entrance on the east side of the south dock, Riven says. The sensor is in the upper left corner of the door frame. Maintenance flagged it as non-functional in October, December, and February. The tenant, Weller Foundation, contested the repair invoice 3 times. Nobody fixed it. Guards. Single rotation. Tuesday evenings the shift is supposed to be 2 people. 1 dock, 1 interior, but the contractor running the security bill is double billing for both, while only sending 1. I saw the invoice discrepancy in a supply order Weller's facilities manager was returning to us. He'd written a note on it in pen. Why are we paying for 2 guards on a single guard night? And then he crossed it out. Riven pauses. I remember the cross-out because it was the kind of cross-out someone does when they've decided it's not safe to ask the question out loud. Bastion nods once. Interior layout. Ground floor is public-facing. Reception, event space, donation intake. Second floor is administrative. That's where the real documentation lives. The offices on the east side of the second floor are where the import records would be. Legitimate charity goods mixed with the port contract paperwork. Riven taps the schematic. There's a freight elevator near the dock entrance. They'd use it to move goods between the loading area and the second floor storage without going through the main lobby. You know the freight elevator? We delivered to it 8 times. I filled out the delivery confirmation forms myself. Bastion is very still. You remember, he says. I remember everything I process, Riven says. Numbers, layouts, discrepancies. It's how I keep the math right. He pauses. It's how I survive. Something in the room shifts, not dramatically, not with any sound, but the quality of the air between them changes. The way it changes when 2 people who have been speaking carefully suddenly realize they are speaking honestly. Bastion reaches across the table and sets his hand on the schematic, palm flat, fingers spread. I'm going to tell you something, he says. Riven waits. I knew who you were before I walked into that store. The kitchen is very quiet. Not personally, Bastion continues. Not your name, not your face, but Kofelt, the contractor who lifted my wallet. His handler sent a briefing to whoever hired them. The briefing identified a target register and a target cashier. Described as isolated, single parent, income dependent, omega, no support network, no resources to push back. He pauses. I intercepted that briefing 40 minutes before I walked through FreshMart's doors. Riven does not move. I came, Bastion says, to see what kind of person they had decided was disposable. The refrigerator hums. And, Riven says, his voice is even, careful. And you paid for a stranger's water with your last card, Bastion says. When the entire situation was designed to make you afraid, you chose kindness. In front of a line of people who were watching. In front of a manager who has been punishing you for months. He stops. I marked you because I have never once, in the years I have been navigating people who treat other people as leverage, I have never once watched someone make that choice without a calculation behind it. Riven looks at his hands. I had a calculation, Riven says. I wanted the scene to stop. I wanted Garrick to not have a reason to write me up. No, Bastion says. You wanted the man in front of you to be treated like a person. Those are different calculations. The afternoon light has shifted. The schematic on the table shows Mercer and Fifth in clean grey lines. Tonight, South Dock, broken sensor. Riven opens his mouth to respond, and his phone lights up on the table. Not a call, not a text. An alert from Jailer Hines' case portal. New document filed. Emergency custody motion, County Family Court. Petitioner, Weller Community Trust. Respondent, Riven Vale. Hearing, Thursday 9 a.m. Riven stares at the screen. Weller Community Trust. A charity arm. A legal petition. Filed through proper channels with proper documentation using the exact CPS flag that Jailer was dismantling. Except now, It has escalated past the flag, past the administrative process, and landed in family court with a Thursday morning hearing date. They didn't wait, Riven says. Bastion picks the phone up. Riven holds it toward him, and Cyrus reads the screen quietly into Bastion's ear. Bastion's entire posture goes flat. Not angry, flat. The particular flatness of a man who has just shifted from response mode to termination mode. His phone is already in his hand. "Jailer," he says when she picks up. "Weller filed a custody motion. Thursday. Yes." A pause. "I know, move faster." He hangs up. He looks, positions himself toward Riven. "They're using the legal system as a clock," Riven says. "They know we're planning something for tonight. They filed this to force a choice. Either we move on the building tonight and it looks reactive and unstable, or we wait and Thursday comes and they have a family court judge looking at an Omega with a suspended job record, a CPS flag, and a documented connection to Bastion Crow." "Yes," Bastion says. "So we have to go tonight," Riven says, "and we have to come back with something that makes Thursday irrelevant." Bastion is quiet for 3 seconds. Then, from the back bedroom, Kip's voice carries down the hall. "Dada, can Commander Captain have a snack?" Riven pushes his chair back. He goes to the kitchen cabinet, the one with the snacks Bastion's people stocked, the ones that are exactly right. And he takes out the crackers and the apple slices, and he makes a small plate. He carries it to the bedroom. Kip is sitting up, Captain in his lap, looking completely untroubled by the world. Riven sets the plate down. Kip takes a cracker, offers one to Captain. "You okay, buddy?" Kip looks at him. That unsettling child accuracy. "The tall man is worried," Kip says. "He's working on something." "Is it about us?" Riven sits on the edge of the bed. "He's making sure we're safe." Kip considers this. Is he good at it? Riven thinks about a briefing intercepted 40 minutes before a wallet was lifted. About a refrigerator stocked with the right oat milk. About a man who said, "I don't cause things," and then look away like it was a principle he had built his entire architecture around. "Yeah," Riven says, "he's good at it." Kip nods, satisfied, takes another cracker. Riven goes back to the kitchen. Bastion is at the window, not looking out, just standing near it, head tilted, listening to the street. Cyrus is checking the team's comms equipment at the table. "We go at 9 p.m., Bastion says. "Doc is quietest between 9 and 10:30. "I'm coming," Riven says. "I know," Bastion says. And this time, he doesn't argue it. What happens next should be the end of it. It is not the end of it. At 8:47 p.m., 13 minutes before they are scheduled to leave, a package arrives at the safe house front door. No courier, no doorbell, just a package on the step when Cyrus checks the perimeter. Inside, a manila envelope. Inside the envelope, 2 items. The first is Riven's complete personnel file. Every write-up, every scheduling note, every HR document from 14 months at FreshMart, including 3 documents Riven has never seen before that appear to be backdated reports describing behavioral concerns and inappropriate scent management. Documents that were never in his actual file. Documents that someone created and inserted. The second item is Kip's birth certificate. A red circle drawn by hand in permanent marker around the home address. And beneath it, a folded note. 4 lines. "You think you ended this tonight. You ended a doorman. The door is still open, and we know where both children sleep." Bastion holds the note. Cyrus reads it to him, word for word, and the room goes the specific cold of a space where someone has decided something irrevocable. Riven looks at the birth certificate, at the red circle around his address, his home address, the apartment with the beetle drawing on the refrigerator and the granola bar on the register shelf, and the couch where Kip kicks Captain out of bed every Tuesday. Circled in red, by someone who wants him to understand that no amount of reinstatement emails or safe houses or family attorneys changes the fundamental arithmetic. They can reach him. They can reach Kip any time. Unless tonight works, unless tonight ends it. Riven sets the birth certificate down. 9 p.m., he says. 9 p.m., Bastion confirms. And then Bastion does something Riven doesn't expect. He reaches out, slowly, asking with the pace of the movement rather than words, and his gloved thumb finds Riven's wrist. The mark point. The place that has been burning for 4 days. One beat of pressure. Not claiming, not possessive. Just, I'm here. We're doing this together. Riven turns his wrist up the rest of the way, and outside the city does what cities do. Indifferent, continuous, unaware that 2 men and a small boy and a stuffed dog named Captain Commander are about to walk into a building that holds the answer to everything. The door is still open, the note said. Tonight they're going to close it. The vote is in 9 days, Thursday is in 40 hours, and Sable is somewhere in that building. A 7-year-old girl in a red coat who doesn't exist in any record and who Bastion Crow made a promise to keep safe. The south dock of the Weller Foundation building smells like cardboard and river water and the particular cold of a city at 9 p.m. in late autumn. One guard, exactly one, standing at the dock entrance with his hands in his jacket pockets, phone out, the body language of a man who is deeply committed to doing the minimum required of him tonight. The sensor in the upper left corner of the service doorframe is dark. Has been dark since October. Riven clocked it from 30 feet away before Bastion's team moved into position. A small, flat device with no indicator light, no response, nothing. A dead eye in a frame that everyone stopped checking. Cyrus takes the guard. Not violently. Riven doesn't even see how it happens. One moment the guard is there. The next, Cyrus is walking him to a car on the far side of the lot with the practiced ease of someone who has done this exact thing in exactly this way more times than Riven wants to calculate. Bastion moves to the service door. His gloved hand finds the frame, the handle, the gap at the bottom. Reading the door the way he reads everything, through contact and sound, and the information that other senses provide when one goes dark. It's unlatched, he says. Riven is already beside him. They left it open? Or someone on the inside left it open for us, Bastion says. His voice is flat, not relieved, the opposite of relieved. Which means either we have a source inside that Cyrus didn't tell me about, or they wanted us to come in, Riven finishes. They stand at the door. The dock is empty. The river somewhere past the building does its slow, cold thing. We go anyway, Riven says. Bastion pushes the door open. The freight elevator is exactly where Riven said it would be. Right side of the dock. Industrial metal. The kind that sounds like it's complaining every time it moves. They take the stairs instead. Bastion's hand on the rail, Riven 1 step ahead. Bastion tracking him by sound and proximity. The two of them moving through the building with the specific efficiency of people who have briefed each other well enough to share a plan without narrating it out loud. Second floor, east side. The administrative offices are dark, except for one. A light under a door at the end of the hall, warm and constant. The kind of light that belongs to someone who is waiting. Riven slows. Bastion's hand finds his shoulder. One brief contact, and they stop. Someone's in there, Riven says. Barely a sound. Bastion tilts his head. Listening to the room, the building, the quality of the silence in that specific hallway. His jaw tightens. One person, he says. Seated, not moving. Riven opens the door. The woman behind the desk is mid-50s, dark skin, reading glasses on a chain, and the expression of someone who has been waiting long enough to be past nervous and into something calmer and colder. Her nameplate reads, Dorinda Price, Operations Director. On the desk in front of her, 2 banker's boxes and a hard drive. She looks at Riven, then at Bastion. "I've been waiting," she says, "for someone to come through that door for 11 months. Riven stays in the doorway. "Who are you?" "I run the import logistics for this floor," she says, "which means I process every document that comes through this building. Which means I have seen, in 11 months, every invoice, every shell transfer, every charity record with a port contract notation buried 3 pages back where an auditor wouldn't find it without knowing what to look for." She pushes one of the banker's boxes forward. "I've been copying everything since April. I didn't know who to give it to. I didn't know who to trust." She looks at Bastion. "And then someone sent a photo of a child to a man who doesn't have any children in his records. And I decided that whoever was willing to walk into this building at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday to find her, that was someone I could trust." Riven looks at Bastion. Bastion is very still. "Sable," he says. "Where is she?" "3rd floor," Dorinda says. "Storage room on the north end. 2 men with her. They've had her since this afternoon." She pauses. "She's not hurt. I checked. I told them I needed to run an inventory on that floor, and I walked past the door, and I knocked twice, and she knocked back." Her voice, for the first time, loses some of its flat precision. She knocked back right away, like she'd been waiting for someone to knock. Bastion moves before Riven can speak. Not fast, controlled, decisive, the movement of a man who has just converted information into direction and is executing. Riven is a step behind him, and the stairs are another door, and the 3rd floor smells like old storage and the particular density of a space that doesn't get opened often. North end. The door is padlocked. External, cheap, the kind that communicates this is temporary more than this is secure. Bastion's team has bolt cutters. The sound of the cut is loud in the storage floor quiet, and one of the men inside says something sharp and muffled. The door opens. 2 men, standing, 1 reaching. Bastion is faster. He doesn't fight, he positions. His body between the men and the door, with the absolute certainty of someone who learned to navigate darkness by becoming the most dangerous thing in it. His voice, when he speaks, is quiet and final. "Put it down. Federal documentation of this building is already in transit. You are going to walk out the loading dock door, and you are not going to make tonight worse for yourselves than it already is." 1 beat. They walk out. And in the back corner of the storage room, sitting on a folded tarp with her knees pulled up, and her red coat buttoned all the way to her chin, and her dark braids slightly undone on one side, is Sable. She is 7 years old, and she looks at Bastion with the expression of a child who was told to wait, who believed she would be found, and who has been holding on to that belief with both hands for 6 hours. "You came," she says. "I said I would," Bastion says. He crosses the room and kneels down, and she puts both arms around his neck, and he holds her, the same way he held Kip in the kitchen, with the complete, unperformed care of a man who is not performing anything. And Riven stands in the door of a storage room in a building that has been hiding evidence for 2 years and watches Bastion Crow hold a child like she is the thing that matters most. He doesn't look away. He doesn't want to. Sable pulls back. She looks at Riven with Bastion's visor angle assessment, evaluating, deciding, and then she says, "Are you the one Bass talks about?" Riven goes very still. "What?" "The one from the store," Sable says. "He told me about someone from a store. He said—" She looks at Bastion. "Can I say?" Bastion's jaw shifts. "Go ahead," he says. Sable looks back at Riven. "He said you were the first person in a long time who made him feel like a regular person. Not a weapon, not a problem, just a person." She tilts her head. He said your hands were fast. Riven stares at her. Then he looks at Bastion. Bastion is facing slightly away. The specific angle of a man who would very much like to be in a room where this conversation is not happening. How long have you been talking to her about me? Riven says. We should move, Bastion says. Bastion. The documents are on the second floor. Bastion Crow. He stops. How long? Riven says. A pause. The storage room is cold. Sable is looking between them with the interested attention of a child watching two adults have a conversation she understands better than they think. Since the day of the store, Bastion says, I told her that evening that I had done something at a grocery store that I wasn't sure was the right decision. Did you tell her what you did? Riven asks. I told her I marked someone, Bastion says, without planning to, without asking, and that it wasn't. That I needed to figure out how to be accountable for that without making it worse. Riven looks at him for a long moment. You've been trying to figure out how to apologize to me, Riven says. Bastion says nothing. Since day one, Riven says. Everything, the job, jailer, the safe house, the food in the refrigerator, all of it. That wasn't strategy. That was… Both, Bastion says. Quiet. Honest. It was both. I needed you safe because I caused the danger, and I needed you to know that I understood what I had taken from you without asking. He pauses. You're right to choose. That's not a small thing. The storage room is quiet. Sable takes Riven's hand. Not asked, just decided. Small fingers wrapping around his the way Kip does, with the full trust of a child whose instincts are still running clean. You have his mark, she tells Riven matter-of-factly. I can smell it. It's different when it's real. Riven looks down at her. What does real smell like? He asks. She thinks about it. Worried, she says. Real marks smell worried, because the person actually cares what happens. They need to move. The documents are downstairs. Cyrus is waiting. The federal contact Bastion's lawyer reached is 20 minutes out, and the Thursday hearing clock is still running, and Duarte Weller is somewhere in this city, not yet knowing that his operations director spent 11 months building a case against him. They need to move, but Riven stands in the doorway of a storage room, holding Sable's hand, and looks at Bastion and says, quietly, only for him, when we're through all of this, you need to tell me the rest. Everything you haven't said. He pauses. I can handle the truth. What I can't handle is finding out later that you didn't trust me with it. Bastion faces him. The visor catches the hallway light. Okay, he says. That one word. Simple. The most complicated simple word Riven has heard in years. They go downstairs. Dorinda prices 2 banker's boxes and the hard drive are waiting on the desk exactly where she left them. She has her coat on, her reading glasses folded and in her pocket. I'll testify, she says when they walk in. I've been ready to testify since April. I just needed someone to testify to. Bastion nods once. Cyrus is going to take you somewhere safe tonight. You'll speak to a federal attorney in the morning. Dorinda picks up her coat, looks at Riven, something in her face. Recognition, or maybe just the specific solidarity of one person who kept their head down in a system that didn't protect them and survived it, recognizing another. You're the cashier, she says. Yes, Riven says. Good, she says. The ones they think don't see anything. Those are always the ones who saw everything. She walks out with Cyrus. The 2 bankers' boxes sit on the desk. The hard drive sits on top, and somewhere in those boxes, Riven already knows this, can feel it, the way he feels the math of things, the pattern of documents, the shape of what's hidden inside what looks legitimate, is the full architecture of what Duarte Weller built. Import records, shell transfers, port contract bribes, the CPS filing, the backdated HR documents, a paper trail that leads from a grocery store in New Jersey to a board vote in 9 days, and every person in between who decided that an Omega cashier and a blind alpha and 2 children were acceptable collateral. Riven picks up the first box. Bastion picks up the second. They walk out of the Weller Foundation building at 10:22 p.m. through the South Dock, the same door they came in, into the cold air that smells like river water and the specific relief of a thing that was locked now coming open. Sable is between them. She holds both their hands, one on each side, and does not look back at the building. The documents are out. Dorinda's ready to testify. Sable is safe. This should be the end. The call comes at 3:14 a.m. Riven is asleep on the safe house couch when his phone lights up the room. Not a ring, a notification, the specific alert from Jailer Hines' case portal that he set to push through even on silent. He is awake before the second buzz, the way parents of small children learn to be awake before the sound fully registers, already moving from horizontal to upright by the time his eyes adjust. The notification reads, "Emergency filing withdrawn. Weller Community Trust, case number 4471, dismissed with prejudice. See attached." He reads it twice, then he reads it a third time. Dismissed with prejudice means it cannot be refiled, cannot be adjusted and resubmitted, cannot be cleaned up and sent back through. It is gone. Not postponed, not paused, gone. And the reason attached to the dismissal is 4 clinical lines of legal language that translate, in plain terms, to: the petitioning organization is currently under federal investigation, and its legal standing to file any motion has been suspended pending the outcome of that investigation. Dorinda Price spoke to the federal attorney at 11 p.m. By 1 a.m., the investigation was formally opened. By 3 a.m., Weller Community Trust did not legally exist as a functioning entity anymore. Riven sits in the dark safe house with his phone in his hands and does not make a sound for a full minute. Then Kip's voice comes from the back bedroom. Not upset, not scared, just the middle-of-the-night random of a 6-year-old. "Dada, does Commander Captain need a blanket?" Riven gets up. He goes to the bedroom. He tucks Captain in with the serious ceremony that the question demands. He sits on the edge of the bed until Kip's breathing evens out. He goes back to the couch. He does not sleep. At 7 a.m., Bastion walks out of the second bedroom and stops when he sees Riven sitting upright on the couch with his phone and the expression of a man who has been alone with information for 4 hours. "The filing was dismissed," Riven says. Bastion stands in the doorway. He's not wearing the visor. For the first time, Riven sees him without it in the morning light, and it takes a second to adjust to what that means. The scar tissue at his left temple, the slight cloudiness in his left eye, and the right that still carries full focus. Not entirely blind, not entirely sighted. Somewhere in the specific geography between those two things, navigating with everything he has. He looks directly at Riven with the right eye, and the directness of it, unmediated by the visor, does something to the air in the room. "I know," Bastion says. "Jailer called me at 3:30. "You let me sit with it alone for 3 hours," Riven says. "You seemed like you needed to." Riven looks at him. "You can read me that accurately." "I can hear when someone's processing something and when they need company," Bastion says. "They sound different." Riven sets the phone down. "Tell me the rest," he says. "You said you would. Sable said there's more. You've been managing information. I've watched you do it, the pauses, the adjustments, and I need you to stop." He pauses. "We went into that building together. You said partner. Partners don't manage each other." Bastion crosses the room. He sits in the chair across from the couch. Not beside Riven, across from him. The physical equivalent of a direct conversation. And he folds his hands on his knees. When I intercepted Kofeldt's briefing, Bastion says, the document that identified your register, I told you it described you as isolated and income-dependent. He stops. That was not all it said. Riven waits. The briefing included a secondary notation, Bastion says, a biological flag. Someone had cross-referenced the FreshMart employee records with an Omegaverse registry database, an old one, not publicly accessible, and they had found a notation on your file from 6 years ago. He pauses. From before Kip was born. The couch is quiet. The morning light comes through the kitchen window at the angle that means it's just past 7. What notation? Riven says. A compatibility marker, Bastion says. A genetic flag. The kind that registers when two people's biological profiles are, statistically, physiologically, an extremely close match. The kind that used to be tracked in old registry systems before the practice was banned as discriminatory. He looks at Riven, that direct right-eye focus. Your marker and mine are the same. They were in the same database. Someone pulled them both. Riven does not move. They didn't choose your register because you were easy to destroy, Bastion says. That was part of it. But the other part, the part they were testing, was whether a mark between two people with that kind of biological match would hold. Whether it would create a real bond rather than a surface one. He pauses. They wanted to know if you were actually compatible with me, because if you were, if the bond held, you become permanent leverage, not a temporary scandal, a permanent vulnerability. Riven stares at him. You knew this, Riven says slowly, before you marked me. You intercepted the briefing. You knew the biological flag was in there. You knew what they were testing. Yes, Bastion says. And you marked me anyway. Yes. Bastion. Because, Bastion says, and here the flat precision of his voice goes somewhere else entirely, the floor of it shifting in a way that has nothing to do with strategy or information management. Because you paid for my water and you were kind in a situation designed to make kindness impossible. And because I have been alone in my work and my world for 3 years, and I looked at you behind that register and He stops, restarts. I made a selfish decision. I knew what they were testing, and I marked you anyway because I wanted to. Not because it was right, because I wanted to. He lets that sit. I'm telling you this because you asked for the truth, and because you deserve to make a decision about what you do with it that is actually yours. The kitchen is very quiet. Kip's bedroom door is closed. Down the hall, Sable is asleep in the second room, her red coat on the chair, her braids slightly undone. Riven looks at his wrist. Is it real? He asks. The compatibility, the mark. Is it chemistry? Or is it something I actually chose? Bastion is silent for a moment. I don't know, he says. I think that's the part nobody knows. Whether the chemistry creates the choice, or the choice creates the chemistry. He pauses. I know what I felt in that store. I know it wasn't manufactured. I also know I can't prove that to you. Riven looks at him for a long time. The morning light is doing the thing it does when it comes in at exactly the right angle, making ordinary spaces look like something that cost more than they did. The Thursday hearing is dismissed, Riven says. Yes. Dorinda's testimony is with federal counsel. Yes. The documents, the banker's boxes. With our attorney, catalogued last night, 47 documents directly connecting Weller's charity arm to the port contract scheme. Enough for federal charges, civil suits, and the kind of press coverage that ends a board vote before it happens. He pauses. It's done. The threat is done. Riven nods slowly. I need 3 days, Riven says, to think, without anyone managing what I know or how I feel about it. He looks at Bastion. Can you give me that? Bastion's jaw shifts. Yes. And then I want to talk, Riven says. Not negotiate, not strategize. Talk. About what you felt in the store. About what I felt. About whether this is something real or something we were pushed into by other people's plans. He pauses. Can you do that? Yes, Bastion says. Again, one word, simple, the most complicated simple word. Riven stands up. He goes to make Kip's breakfast, and Bastion sits in the chair in the morning light, with his hands on his knees and the right eye open, and something on his face that is not relief, and not grief, and not happiness, but some combination of all three that doesn't have a common name. It is the look of a man who told the truth and is waiting to find out what it costs. From the kitchen, the sound of a cabinet opening. The cereal box, the particular ritual of a parent making a morning ordinary for a child, even when nothing about the surrounding circumstances is ordinary. And then Kip's door opens and his feet on the floor. Sock feet, the Tuesday shuffle. And his voice, "Is Sable up? Can we do the beetle drawing together?" Bastion says, "I'll check on her." He stands. He moves down the hall. He knocks on Sable's door, 2 knocks, gentle, and waits. From inside, 2 knocks back. He opens the door. Riven has the truth now, all of it. The compatibility flag. The choice Bastion made, knowing what it was. 3 days. That's what Riven asked for. And then a real conversation, not about strategy, not about protection, about what is actually between them. But before those 3 days are up, an envelope arrives, and what's inside it changes the shape of everything Riven thought he understood about Kip. 3 days pass. They are quiet days. The specific quiet of a situation that has been loud for a long time and has finally, briefly, run out of emergency. Kip and Sable establish a working creative partnership by the end of day 1 that involves an expanding beetle kingdom, a shared crayon collection, and a set of rules that Kip announces solemnly and Sable refines with the precision of a child who has spent significant time alone with her thoughts. Riven goes back to FreshMart on Monday. Lane 6, the sticky scanner. The belt speed trick. The screen freeze fix. 2 taps, left corner, hard. Desta is at the express lane and does not say anything dramatic. She just slides a coffee onto the end of Riven's belt at 8:03 a.m. and walks away. That is all. That is exactly the right amount. Bastion does not come to the store, does not text, does not send a town car. He gives Riven the 3 days the way he gave him the morning on the couch, by reading the difference between someone who needs company and someone who needs space and choosing correctly. On the 3rd evening, Riven puts Kip to bed. He sits at the kitchen table. He looks at his wrist, the mark point, the place that has burned for a week and has now settled into something lower and steadier, like a light left on in a room you left but haven't locked. He picks up his phone. He calls the unknown number, Bastion's number, which is no longer unknown, which Riven saved on day 2 under a name he spent 4 minutes choosing and then deleted twice before landing on something honest. It rings once. "I'm ready to talk," Riven says. A pause, then, "Where?" "Here," Riven says. "My apartment. I want you to come here. Not the safe house, not the town car. Here." He pauses. "I want you to see where we actually live." Another pause, longer. "Okay," Bastion says. He arrives 40 minutes later. No Cyrus, no team. Just Bastion at the door of Riven's apartment in a dark jacket and no visor. The right eye open and direct, the scar visible, moving through the doorway and into the space and registering it the way he registers everything. By sound, by texture, by the particular atmosphere of a place that has been lived in by specific people over time. Riven watches him take in the apartment. The couch with the worn cushion on the left side, the beetle drawings on the refrigerator. the small backpack on the hook by the door. Captain's emergency travel pack. The bookshelves that are not quite full because the books Riven wanted are the ones he gave away when he moved here to make the math work. Bastion stands in the middle of the room. "It's a good apartment," he says. "It's a small apartment," Riven says. "That's not the same as a bad one," Bastion says. "It feels settled, like someone made it on purpose." They sit, not on opposite sides of anything, side by side on the couch, with the worn left cushion between them and the kitchen light on and the beetle drawings visible from where they're sitting. Riven talks first. He tells Bastion about the 3 days, what he thought about, what he kept coming back to, the compatibility flag, the biological match, the old registry notation, and how it sat with him. Whether it made the mark feel less real, or more real, or just differently real. "I kept trying to figure out," Riven says, "if what I feel is mine, or if it's just chemistry doing what chemistry does. If I would have looked at you the same way without the mark." He pauses. "And I couldn't answer that. I can't answer it. Nobody can." "No," Bastion agrees. "So I stopped trying to answer it," Riven says, "and I started asking a different question." Bastion is listening. The specific quality of his listening, everything else gone still, only the incoming signal, makes Riven feel, in a way he is still adjusting to, like the most important thing in the room. "I asked, 'Do I trust you?'" Riven says. "Not the chemistry, not the mark. You, the person who intercepted a briefing and came to see what kind of person they'd decided was disposable. The person who stocked the right oat milk and hired the right attorney and told me the truth when I asked for it, even though it cost him." He looks at Bastion. "And the answer is yes, I trust you. That part is mine." Bastion is very still. "The rest," Riven says, "we figure out. Not fast. Not because of the biology. Because we actually get to know each other and decide." He pauses. "But I wanted you to know that the foundation is there. The part I can confirm." Bastion is quiet for a moment that stretches long enough to mean something. Then he says, "I have something to tell you." Riven waits. "Before I came to FreshMart," Bastion says, "before I intercepted the briefing, before any of this, I've been looking into the Weller operation for 8 months. I was close. Closer than they knew. Dorinda wasn't the only source I had. I had a contact in the Port Authority who had been feeding me documentation." He pauses. That contact's name was Ayana. Riven goes still. "Sable's mother," Riven says. "Yes," Bastion says. "Ayana was the one who found the compatibility flag in the first place. She was running a cross-reference on Weller's hiring practices. He had a pattern of targeting biologically compatible omega-alpha pairs and using the bonds as leverage. She found the flag between your file and mine, and she flagged it in her documentation." He pauses. "She told me about it 3 weeks before she died. She said, 'There's a cashier in Jersey whose biology matches yours. Weller's people are going to find him eventually. If they get there first, you lose him before you ever get the chance.'" Riven stares at him. "She told you," Riven says slowly. "Ayana told you about me. 3 weeks before she died." "Yes." "And you didn't." "I was going to reach out," Bastion says. "I was building the approach. I didn't want to show up at your register out of nowhere and say—" He stops. "I didn't know how to do it without making you feel like an asset, like someone I was managing." He pauses, "And then Kofelt moved on my wallet before I could." Riven sits with this. The kitchen light hums. The beetle drawings are there on the refrigerator. Captain is, presumably, on duty in Kip's room. "Ayana gave you a warning," Riven says. "She used her last weeks to make sure you knew I existed. She died before she could finish exposing Weller, and she left you a letter asking you to take care of Sable." He looks at Bastion. She was connecting the pieces. The compatibility flag. Sable. You. Me. He pauses. She was building something. Bastion's hands are still on his knees. I think, he says carefully, that she knew what the bond would mean. Not the chemistry, the choice it could become. She was trying to make sure the choice had a chance before Weller could turn it into a weapon. Riven thinks about a woman he has never met. Dark, patient, detail-oriented, he builds her from the outline. Sable's mother, Bastion's partner, the person who read a registry database and saw not a liability but a possibility, and spent her last weeks making sure that possibility survived her. She sounds like she was extraordinary, Riven says. She was the most dangerous person I ever worked with, Bastion says. She noticed everything. Riven looks at his hands. She sounds like someone I would have liked, he says. She would have liked you, Bastion says, simply. She told me as much. They sit together for a long moment that is not uncomfortable. The kind of quiet that belongs to two people who have said the necessary things and are resting in the space after. Then Kip's door opens. Sock feet, the Tuesday shuffle. He appears in the kitchen doorway, hair compressed from sleep on one side, captain dangling, and registers Bastion's presence with zero surprise. The way children accept things that their instincts have already processed. You're here, Kip says to Bastion. I'm here, Bastion says. Kip nods. This is acceptable. He goes to the refrigerator, gets the apple slices left from dinner, and sits at the kitchen table. Can Sable come over tomorrow? He asks Riven. Yeah, buddy, Riven says. She can come over. Kip eats an apple slice, offers one to Captain, considers the ceiling. Is he going to keep coming over? Kip asks, still looking at the ceiling, the casual tone of someone asking a question they have already decided the answer to. Riven looks at Bastion. Bastion's right eye, open and direct, finds him across the room. Is he? Kip asks again, slightly more insistent. We're figuring it out, Riven says. Kip brings his gaze down from the ceiling. He looks at Bastion with that full, unfiltered assessment that has not changed since the daycare. Head tilted, solving something. His smell is still worried, Kip says, but less. He takes another apple slice. That's good. Worriedless is better. He takes Captain back to his room. The door closes. The kitchen is quiet again. Riven looks at Bastion. Bastion is looking, facing, orienting toward the closed bedroom door with an expression that has nothing managed about it. Nothing controlled or flat or strategic, just the face of a man who is sitting in an ordinary kitchen at 9 p.m. in a small apartment with beetle drawings on the refrigerator and a 6-year-old who just called him less worried and who is, for the first time in 3 years, not sure what the next thing he should be prepared for is. He's right, Riven says quietly. You do smell less worried. Bastion turns toward him. You can tell? He says. I'm learning your tells, Riven says. Something in Bastion's face, the careful architecture of it, shifts. Not a smile, not quite, but the thing that lives in the same country as a smile. That's fair, he says. You've been reading mine for a week. Since the store, Riven says. Since the store, Bastion agrees. They sit with that. The store, the water, the $2, the receipt still warm in Riven's hand. All of it becoming, in the rear view of this ordinary kitchen, the beginning of something that neither of them chose, and both of them, in their own time and for their own reasons, are choosing to keep. The threat is gone. The documents are with federal counsel. Dorinda is testifying. Weller's organization is dismantled. The board vote in 9 days will happen without interference. Riven has his job. Kip has Sable. Bastion has both of them. The envelope arrives 6 weeks later. No return address. Postmarked from a city 3 states away, Riven's full name and the apartment address in handwriting that is small and very careful, the kind of handwriting that belongs to someone who chose their words the way other people choose their steps. He knows, before he opens it, that it is from Ayana. He doesn't know how he knows, he just does. The way he knows which items will make the scanner stick before he runs them. The way he knew the Weller Building's service door would be unlatched before Bastion put his hand on the frame. Pattern recognition. The math of things. He sits at the kitchen table. It is a Saturday morning. Kip and Sable are on the living room floor with the Beetle Kingdom, which has expanded to include a Beetle Parliament, a Beetle currency system, and an ongoing territorial dispute that Kip narrates with the dramatic commitment of a sports commentator. They are loud in the specific, harmless way of children who feel safe enough to be loud. Bastion is in the kitchen making coffee. He does that now. Comes over on Saturday mornings, brings the good coffee, uses the kitchen with the ease of someone who has learned the cabinet layout and the left corner screen fix, and the exact moment the belt needs a half-second pause. Not moved in, not claimed, just present, in the incremental way of someone who is choosing a life rather than announcing one. Riven opens the envelope. Inside, 2 items. The first is a letter. 3 pages, handwritten, in that same small, careful script. He reads the first line and has to put it down for a moment. By the time this reaches you, I will be gone, and you will have found each other anyway, which means the part I was most afraid of didn't happen. He picks it up again. He reads it straight through without stopping. Ayana's letter is not a revelation. It is not a dramatic final twist, or an accusation, or a warning. It is a letter from a woman who spent the last weeks of her life making sure that the people she loved and the people she had identified as worth protecting would have what they needed after she wasn't there to give it to them. She writes about the compatibility flag, found it in February, understood what it meant, understood what Weller's people would do with it if they found it first. She writes about Bastion, what she saw in him, what she knew about the loneliness under the competence, the man under the weapon. She writes about Sable, what she needs, what she's good at, what makes her laugh. And then she writes about Riven. I found you in a database, and then I found you in the store's employee records, and then I found you in a supply chain complaint you filed about a broken refrigeration unit in aisle 7 that no one had fixed for 3 weeks. You filed it 3 times. Professional, specific, no personal frustration in the language, just the facts of the problem and what it was costing people. And I thought, this person is still trying to make things better inside a system that is not making things better for him. That is the person Bastion needs to know exists. Riven sets the letter flat on the table. He does not cry in kitchens either. That's a second rule, made some years after the parking lot rule, when he understood that the rules weren't about suppressing things, but about choosing where to feel them. But his eyes are doing something he decides not to categorize. What is it? Bastion says. He has gone still at the coffee maker. Not turned, just stopped, reading Riven's breathing the way he reads everything. A letter, Riven says, from Ayana. The coffee maker finishes. Bastion does not move. She wrote it in advance, Riven says. Set it up to send, from a location she chose, on a timer. She planned for the possibility that she wouldn't make it. Bastion's hands are on the counter. She talks about you, Riven says. She talks about me. He pauses. She was right about almost everything. Almost, Bastion says. She thought it would take us longer, Riven says. She built in extra time. She thought you would be difficult. The corner of Bastion's mouth does the thing that lives next door to a smile. She knew me well. Riven looks at the second item in the envelope. It is a small, folded card, the kind that comes with flowers or is tucked into a birthday gift. Ayana's handwriting, this time just one line. Tell Sable she can have my good braiding combs. She knows which ones. Riven laughs, actually laughs, A short, real sound, surprised out of him by a woman he never met, who apparently knew exactly how to end a letter. Bastion hears it, and something in his posture loosens. That same shift, the architecture releasing something it was holding. "What?" he says. Riven reads him the line. Bastion is quiet for a moment. Then he says, "She had 3 combs, silver handles. She kept them in a blue case. I've had that case for 6 months, not knowing what to do with it." "Now you know," Riven says. They sit with that, with Ayana's letter on the kitchen table, and the sounds of Kip and Sable in the next room, and the coffee done, and the Saturday morning light coming through the window at the angle that makes ordinary spaces look like they cost more than they did. "I want to read it," Bastion says. Riven picks it up. He reads it to him, all 3 pages. His voice steady, not performing steadiness, actually steady, the way a person is steady when they are in a place they trust. He reads Ayana's words about Bastion, about what she saw in him, about the man under the strategy, about the decision she trusted him to make. Bastion listens with his hands folded and his eyes open and his face doing the thing it does when he has decided that what he's feeling is not only permitted to appear, but is actually required to. When Riven finishes, the kitchen is quiet for a long moment. "She would have liked you," Bastion says again. The same words as before, but different. Weighted differently now, carrying the letter in them. "I know," Riven says. "I liked her first, before I even knew her name." Bastion turns toward him, right eye, direct and open. "I need to tell you something," he says. "You've been saying that all morning," Riven says. "This time it's short," Bastion says. He reaches across the table, slowly, asking with the pace of it, and his thumb finds Riven's wrist. The mark point. Not burning anymore, just warm, settled. Present the way things are. Present when they have decided to stay. "I don't do accidents," Bastion says. "I told you that the first night. I don't accidentally mark someone. I don't accidentally stock a refrigerator. I don't accidentally show up." He pauses. "I chose you in that store, not because of the briefing or the biology or the flag, because you paid for a stranger's water, and your hands were fast, and your voice was kind, and I have been waiting, without knowing I was waiting, for a person who made choices like that in situations like that." He stops. "That part is mine." Riven looks at him. He thinks about the receipt, still warm in his hand in a grocery store 6 weeks ago. About a wrist that burned for a week and then settled. About $2 and 1 bottle of water, and the specific chain of events that one small kindness can start when it lands in the right moment. "Okay," Riven says. The same word Bastion used in the storage room, the same weight. From the living room, a dramatic Beetle Parliament crash. Sable's voice, calm and judicial. "The defense must present evidence, or the Beetle vote cannot proceed." Kip, outraged. "Captain is the evidence." Bastion says, still holding Riven's wrist, "Is Captain legally recognized in this jurisdiction?" "He was promoted to commander last week," Riven says. "So technically, yes." "Then I think the defense has a case," Bastion says. Riven looks at him, really looks, all the way through the visor and the scar and the 3 years of careful architecture, and sees a man who noticed a cashier's hands in a grocery store and made a decision that cost him the careful distance he had built, and chose it anyway. "The defense has a very strong case," Riven says. He does not let go of Bastion's hand. Bastion does not let go of his. In the living room, the Beetle Parliament reaches a verdict. Kip announces it with the solemn satisfaction of a person who has never once doubted that kindness wins in the end. The kitchen light hums, the letter is on the table, the coffee is done, and outside the city does what cities do, indifferent, continuous, full of ordinary people making extraordinary choices in grocery store lines at 4:47 p.m. on Thursday afternoons, in the specific and powerful way that $2 can change the shape of everything. That's where Riven's story lands. Not in a fairy tale. In something better. A real life, chosen on purpose, built out of $2 and fast hands and the stubborn belief that kindness matters even when the math is hard. And Ayana, who saw all of it coming and spent her last weeks making sure it had a chance, she gets the ending she built. The combs are in a blue case. Sable knows which ones. If this story moved you, if any part of it felt true, I want to hear from you in the comments. Tell me the moment that hit hardest. Tell me which character you saw yourself in. Tell me what you want to see next. And if you are new here, please subscribe right now and turn on your notifications. Every week on this channel, we bring you stories about ordinary people who choose to be human in situations that were designed to make that impossible. Stories about kindness that cost something, about bonds that are built, not just felt, about the people who pay $2 for a stranger and change everything. This community is built by people who believe those stories matter. You belong here. Hit subscribe, turn on the bell. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. We will see you in the next one.